and welcome back to Lovely. I hope wherever you are having an incredible week. I recently had a cottage weekend with 14 of my closest friends, and I feel like I am on such a high right now because it was such a good weekend filled with good friends, good food, awesome memories, and we watched a lot of TV. We watched an unhealthy amount of Love Island. Lots of analysis were done. And I feel like at this point, the amount of reality TV that I've watched, I can do case studies on how people behave, how their differences bring them together, apart. Speaking of case studies and a lot of content that you're seeing online and just advice in general, I keep thinking that there is no shortage of advice in the world right now. We have books, we have podcasts such as this one, we have therapists, we have influencers, and we have people on TikTok explaining your childhood wounds in 30 seconds. And while I think that is, incredibly valuable at the right time, I've realized that the advice that I trust the most usually comes from people that have actually lived it. Because knowledge is knowing something, but wisdom is surviving it. And I love that, this idea of wisdom is you have an idea, you watch it fail, you try it again, you learn the hard lessons, and then you come back and you talk about it and you share those experiences. So I am very excited for today's conversation because we've had a variety of guests on Lovely. A lot of people who have shared frameworks, strategies, perspectives on dating, identity, culture. But today's guests, I think, bring that extra flavor. It's a little different. They bring so much lived experience and also help couples navigate the messy, complicated, beautiful reality of loving another human being. So today I have Anna Gold and Tim Utting, who are the co-founders of Replenish Relationships. They are relationship educators. They are retreat facilitators. They are IMAGO, IMAGO practitioners, which I do want to learn more about. And they've spent years helping couples move through conflict, connection, and what it actually takes to build conscious, lasting relationships. Fun fact, they have also been married for more than 35 years themselves. That alone, oh my God, huge milestone. And I want to take in everything. And I think it just makes them so much more qualified than most of the internet. So we're going to talk about all of their work today, what's going on with modern dating, and what it looks like to build a relationship that lasts beyond the honeymoon phase. Anna and Tim, welcome to Lovely. How are we doing today?
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you for having us, Mehak. We're excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm ecstatic to talk to you both. And just a quick observation. So, Anna, your glasses that you're wearing, very funky, very fun. Tim, I like your glasses too,
You want
but
them off?
can't say funky or fun. Is that reflective in both of your personalities?
That's a great question.
Oh boy, is it ever.
I like it. I like it. I want to get into all the differences and quirks that you both have. Where are you both joining us from right now?
We're in New Hamburg, Ontario, Canada, which is a small little town just about an hour and a half west of Toronto.
Well, lovely to have you. And I think I want to get right into it. So, the question that I love to ask all my guests is what is your connection to immigrant identity? But I want to further personalize it. So, Tim, from our research, I know you grew up in Woodstock, Ontario. I would love to know, what did fitting in and belonging look like for you growing up?
I grew up with very few interactions with people from other countries that have come to Canada, immigrants who have moved into Canada and become very much part of communities like, certainly the city of Toronto and Hamilton. It was when I left Woodstock that I had really my eyes open to so many diverse cultures and situations. And then I met Anna, which really makes a real change in the process.
So I grew up actually in rural, really rural Ontario, which was also, I guess, monochromatic would be the best word, like very, very Caucasian. I felt like an outsider always. And, I was visually, people of color, I think one in my entire high school. Religion is one thing, but also just how culturally different I felt from where I was. We came from another province, from a more academic world, and then moved to a farm. So I was pretty isolated for that part, and then left as quickly as I could to go to a city and to study and to find my people.
And where did you move to?
I lived in Toronto, is where I did my undergraduate, where I made my home for a while before coming back to the very close to the same area where I grew up, where we both grew up, sort of midway between where we both grew up.
One thing that really stuck with me, you mentioned that you felt like an outsider. So, I guess when it came to, finding looking for traits in your significant other as you move on with dating, did you want to find someone that you felt like an insider with?
I did. I didn't do that, but I did want to do that. And I did date some people along the way who shared more similar backgrounds to me than Tim does. But love has its way, right? It doesn't agree with our plan, which is so interesting in terms of how people meet one another these days and how we met at that time. We met in graduate school, but that might be a different conversation.
Oh, no, no, no. I am dying to know the story of how you both met. So please take us back in time. What was the surrounding like? What was the occasion? How did you meet? I wanna hear it all.
So I think contextually, one of the things is that I was really at a point where I was really tired of meeting the same people, the same types of people, similar backgrounds to my own. And I was really looking for somebody very different. And in so doing, I did something that was a little unusual for me. I went to a costume party on Halloween. And normally I'd be the guy who would just sort of, well, oh, geez, I didn't bring a costume or anything like that. That's just not me. But I went kind of crazy for this situation because I thought that I knew other people would be dressing up significantly. So I went as King Henry VIII. I had a big bucket of chicken. I had pillows all across my body and, making myself very rotund. Anyways, and I was sitting there at this party with a lot of people, sort of being pretty crazy. And in walked this person through the front door who wasn't dressed up really at all. She had sort of like a tuxedo jacket on or something like that. And it was Anna. And she just really struck me right from the beginning as, whoa, this is someone who's different. Who shows up at a party, so costumes like this and not wearing something elaborate? And I thought, well, that's usually me.
You know what? These days, you don't hear a lot of people saying they met at a party, right? It's usually an app, it's usually something else. So, Anna, do you remember what you first said to Tim?
I remember how I felt. I don't remember. I probably said something rather forward. I was a bit ballsy, but I remember looking at him and thinking, oh, he looks like a safe refuge in a crazy place. And I didn't really want to be there at all. My memory is that you were alone on that couch. And I was like, oh, he looks like he's on his own. And I wanted to talk to you and just sit quietly, chaos, and have a conversation.
What was your first initial, even just like physical impressions? Like, Tim, were you looking at Anna and being like, "Wow, she's cute," or like Anna, were you doing the same? Like, what was that like?
Certainly, it's amazing how you see somebody from across the room or when you're at a bar or restaurant or wherever and people just sort of draw your attention your visual attention, and that certainly was the case with Anna. And then to see her sort of in such a different sort of way of being than everybody else, that was really quite significant too.
You've described that I held myself apart. There was something appealing to me about standing apart.
Yeah. And she had these gorgeous green eyes that were just unbelievable. So,
I can see those beautiful eyes. You meet at a Halloween party, sparks are flying. Do you guys continue to talk more that night, or like when do you make plans to see each other next?
Oh, that's a great question. We talked for ages. We talked and talked and talked. And I was looking for someone who was interested, I realized in retrospect, interested in their life, like engaged, like had energy for what they were doing. And so I think what most attracted me to Tim was that he was so enthusiastic about what he was studying and researching and learning. And I also thought he would be kind of a hoot because he was all dressed up in costume. So it's so funny you say that about the glasses because, he's actually pretty conservative in some ways, or was. And I was certainly wilder than Tim. There's no doubt about it. So we talked and we talked. And then I think I said it right, Tim. I said, I'll see you tomorrow. I think it was the next day. And I said, I'll just come by. We had at that time, graduate students had like offices. I said, I'll come by your office, which was a shared house. I'll come by there and I'll say hello. And he's like, okay, great. Um, and I went and he wasn't there when he said he was going to be there. And I didn't know if that was a red flag, right? That kind of like you're not showing up when you say you're going to show up. At the time, we didn't even have cell phones. And so I left him a note that said my landline phone number and said, you have one more chance. And then I left and he called me.
He better. He better have. There was yearning from like both of your ends. And then did you guys go on your first date?
We did.
we did.
Yeah. What was the first date?
It was good, but
It was good, but I was very stuck in the way I'd done things before. I grew up with like you had good manners and you did certain things like open up the door for Anna and offer to drive her car even if she didn't want to drive. Just sort of really stupid things like that. And it was very clear that Anna tested me right from the word go. Who is this guy? She was so different than anybody else I'd ever dated. So different.
And did that scare you? Like, were you hesitant? Yeah.
Did it scare you, Anna?
no, I mean, I was testing you for sure. And I wasn't all that attached to social etiquette. I mean, I would do whatever I wanted. And like on our first date, we were at this restaurant and I was like, oh, I feel like having a cigarette. And at that time, I'd occasionally have a cigarette and you could smoke in restaurants. And so I like went over to a table and I like bummed a cigarette from someone. This is the culture of the time. You weren't so impressed with that, you know?
No, I wasn't. Like, I really felt like I was a little bit like the deer in headlights, and because this person was so different. Anna was so different than anybody I ever met. But at the same time, that's what I was looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
You
why you
know?
dressed up and went to that Halloween
Yeah,
party.
absolutely. And, Anna being Jewish, that was something that was very significant, very different for me to be dating somebody who, like I said, didn't have a similar background to mine. It was very different.
Well, and you came from actually quite a religious Anglican background. So not that you were religious, but that the background you've been raised in. So we really came from very, very different places. And I was a shock. I mean, he was a bit of a shock to my family, for sure. There were some challenges there, not don't date him kind of challenges, but some teasing and some optics that were and some opinions that weren't particularly welcome. And the same on his side. There was a bit of hesitation, I would say, and caution around me. So we had to navigate some of that for a while.
Yeah, I can imagine because, Back in the day, I think there was a much bigger emphasis on you're not just being with the person, but you're being with the entire package and everything that they bring. I think we've kind of evolved. It still stands to a certain extent, but we've kind of evolved to more of like an individual culture, right? So it's less emphasis on like, oh, if I'm with this person, I also have to be with their family because now it's just like, oh, I don't really have to care about family sometimes. So I can understand the tug of war that I guess you both were going through. So, how do you go from a Halloween party to not being there when you were supposed to, then going on the first date, and then ending up for 35 years?
Well, I think I would say that I was pretty smitten and all in right away. I sort of felt that I was ready for a long term relationship, whether that meant be getting married or not. And, I really felt, I mean, Anna and I, we can talk about our differences, but we did have sort of very common ways of looking at things, perspectives. And I think it was just, for me, it was a case of, I'm willing to see where this goes and really work it out and see if we can make this happen. I think it was a little different for Anna though.
Well, I think that it's been a huge journey. I mean, if we had known what long-term committed partnership looked like, we couldn't have known. We couldn't have known. Neither of us saw it in our own families. We both come from families where our parents divorced. We didn't know the rewards and the challenges and then the rewards of building a loving, conscious, intentional relationship. And so how we got there, I would say, is by being absolutely determined to see what lay below the surface, to figure it out, to have our children, we have two adult sons, have the experience of seeing us, duke it out and come out the other side more intact, more aware, more connected. And we couldn't do it without help. This is an interesting point for me because there's this mythology that still persists that you fall in love or in some degree of love. There's a continuum in like or in lust or whatever we want to say, in attraction. And then it's going to be, then we have Hollywood to thank for the happily ever after myth. And the reality is that nobody knows how to do this. Like, where's the school? Like, how do you, like, Tim says something and I react before I even know what it is he means. Like, how are we supposed to learn how to connect without help? And so when we got into trouble, we got help. And we just never looked back. I mean, we asked for the kind of help that we now offer.
Let's kind of move on to the work that you do. And I believe it is IMAGO, correct?
It is IMAGO, correct.
Tell me more about IMAGO and, kind of what is the foundation of the work that you do and what are some of the things that you're helping couples with?
So I just want to make sure I understand your question. So the foundational tool of IMAGO is mirroring, making sure that we know what the other person is saying. It has a core tool and we use it all the time. And we use it both for play and for serious conversations. And we teach it. The core of the word imago comes from the Latin word image. And the concept is that we have an image that is deeply embedded in our subconscious of what love and security and connection will feel like and how we will know when we're with someone who creates that feeling for us. And that stems from our childhood. It was interesting. You talked earlier about TikTok and childhood wounds and how people are explaining it in 30 seconds. We don't think it takes 30 seconds to explain it, but it takes a lifetime of living together and sort of mining, in a way, what is going on below the surface. There's a few key components. One of them is that we do form an impression from our earliest attachment, our earliest experiences of what it feels like to be with our prime caregivers, whoever they may be. And those relationships form what we think and feel it will be like to be in a connected, loving, secure relationship or insecure. They're a template. And then we go out in the world. And when we get to the age of dating, we We unconsciously are sort of seeking someone who will match that, our imago. It's the idea that it is in our differences and in our conflict and in our disconnects where the most growth can happen. Like if we can buy into the idea that where we differ, if two people can buy into that, where we differ and where we disagree and where we don't quite get each other, there's learning and there's growth and there's opportunity. And that we, in a way, have the key to each other's growth and self-actualization and relational experiences, then every time something comes up between us that feels not great, we can get curious about what is that? How did you hear me that way? What did you hear me saying? What did that mean to you? Rather than reactive. And that's absolutely key to long-term relationship, is deciding that there is growth, that you are each other's best opportunity to grow and learn and not, have fun. And yes, be loving and yes, be playful, but also to do the work.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
The way I would venture into the whole conversation beyond, what Anna is saying, because I think she's nailed it in terms of what the theory is all about. But the problem with a lot of relationships are you start off this wonderful, sort of gaga feeling of, you know, this person is really cool and beautiful. And oh, yeah, we like the same things. And oh, yeah, I believe I've been with this person all my life. They finished my sentences and we eat the same foods and everything. And the problem with that is that you get sucked in, which is really a good thing, to get sucked into a connection with another person. But then what ends up happening is it's almost like somebody mentioned, I think earlier, about a honeymoon phase. At some point, the honeymoon phase, sort of the blinkers come off and you see the things that you're not necessarily alike in, and that there's something that they like that you don't like, and something they do that really bugs you, and it really starts to get into a consideration about how you communicate and how you work through your differences. And we really find that, in many ways, a lot of arguments, a lot of difficulties that couples get into are simply because they miss each other in terms of what they're trying to say to one another. Somebody doesn't listen, and we get into talking about the importance of really hearing the other person. Is that there's a lot of times where, arguments start because you're not really hearing what the other person has said, or the person who's expressed what they think they've said very clearly is not being clear at all, and the person doesn't really understand what they're saying, and that pisses them off. And quickly, people might get out of a relationship that really could be very good for them long term, but they sort of say, I got to go somewhere else and get my romantic high somewhere else.
Romantic high is such a good word to explain it. So, as you both are telling me this, and after I say this, I kind of want to hear an example of whether it was early, in the middle, or even now, a very like significant moment where you knew you guys were different, and it was coming out in good ways or bad ways, and then this framework helped you. But before I get to that, I am a very optimistic person. So as you are saying all of this, glass half full always, wouldn't it be great if people can just sort it out and try to understand and communicate and comprehend? I get it. For the longest time, and I feel like perception is all about lived experiences. And my lived experiences in my relationships, I have always gravitated towards people that are very different from me. And I think opposites attract for that reason. But I don't think opposites last, and I don't think they can cohabitate. So that's like the realist in me, right? And when I hear about this framework, it almost feels like life is very organic and natural. So when you bring in therapy terminology and frameworks, it almost feels unnatural. So, how do you stop that reaction of scheduling a meeting or scheduling intimacy? That's what I guess I want to hear from you. What's like a real story you can tell us that would change the realist of the world to believe in this?
There's so much in what you've just said, Mehak. Oh my goodness, we could talk for another 2 hours just about all of the pieces. I would reframe the opposites attract to we look for in our partners traits that are not fully developed in ourselves. And we do it unconsciously. So I looked for someone who was stable, calm. I thought he was playful and engaged. He was dressed as King Henry VIII. But what I was really looking for at an unconscious, subconscious level was someone who was stable, grounded, even, loving, loyal. And he's all of those things. But I didn't know that. That was going on below the surface. And he was looking for someone who was enlivening and playful and silly and out there. But and that was kind of what I looked like, except that very early on we sat down and had those intense conversations. When you say you're not sure it really works, opposite attracts, it won't work. You're absolutely right. Unless you dig into those differences with curiosity and find out what is going on in those differences. Why are they triggering? Why are you reactive to one another? Again, it's in the differences where really deep, loving learning takes place. That's my theoretical response to you. And then you asked for an example of where that sort of rubber meets the road for us. We didn't plan this, did we, honey? All right. What are we going to reveal?
Well, I can think of one.
Okay.
So I think that one of the things that Anna and I learned very early in our relationship was that when we were trying to decide to do something, if one of us were to say, well, let's go left, the other person would say, let's go right. And, and it was sort of like that. We're going to paint the kitchen. Well, I think we should paint it blue. Well, I think we should paint it yellow. It was just constant where we would be looking at doing things differently. And it's sort of like, well, then you ask yourself the question is, well, why in the heck are we together? What is this all about? And then what we learned is that we had to really hear each other out and to really find what it was about. Like, was there a reason why, I didn't want to have a yellow kitchen? Or was there a reason why Anna, wanted to actually go on a camping trip and I wanted to go and be at a resort? And then if you actually communicate with one another and really hear the circumstance, well, I remember being in our kitchen growing up and it was yellow and it was always where my parents fought or something like that. A lot of this comes back to your past experiences and the circumstances you've had before you got together that really impact what your decisions are and what you like and dislike in the present.
Yes, the differences. I love how you articulated that. I think that was great. And one of the biggest differences between us is not what we like and don't like. That is absolutely true, right? It is true that I want to camp and he wanted cottages and I wanted to travel and he wanted, that we had different wants for sure. But the biggest difference in us, and this is pretty classic, is that I want to express my feelings. I want to talk. I want to talk it out. And I want to yell sometimes. Like when we were first together, I would like escalate. And Tim is what is well known in our IMAGO world as a
Turtle.
A turtle. Okay.
Yeah. I go into my shell.
Oh, I see. I think in attachment styles, could you also make it as avoidant and anxious attachment? Or like turtle, stoic are completely different things
I
from.
think for the purposes, that's a great question. And we could spend a lot of time on attachment style, Mehak, but I think that we could get caught up in that. And people they like end up over intellectualizing, like, who am I and how do I function this way? And what do I need in a partner? And we know there are archetypes of how people show up in relationship and in particular in their core romantic love relationship. So if you're dating someone and you're one kind of person where you want to express and dig in and talk and work it out, and you're with someone who is quiet and lovely, but not as expressive, there's going to end up being some challenges in that space.
So I like the turtle. I like the turtle archetype. And what are you, Anna?
Well, I have 3 names in the current IMAGO working through. Originally, I was a Hailstorm, which has really worked for us as an understanding of what I'm doing, because suddenly there's a dark cloud and I'm all over it, right? There's also the term tiger, right? Claws out, claws in. And the one that we identify with a lot is octopus. So the idea that I'm going to pursue connection with everything in me. And Tim, he sort of relaxes into connection and he doesn't need to pursue. He's more of a retreater than a pursuer. Through the work that we have done, which is dialogue, again, it's sitting down, we face each other, we talk facing one another, we listen to each other, we mirror each other. Actually, at this point in our lives, I am increasingly trusting that Tim will find me if I'm doing my own thing long enough. And he's willing to come and sit down and have structured conversations and connect or a romantic moment or whatever it is. And I don't need to pursue as hard. I trust that he will show up and he trusts that when he shows up, I will calm down so we can co-regulate.
Can you give me another example of where the turtle in Tim comes out and the hailstorm and octopus in you comes out? And how did Tim come and find you? And then how did you calm down? Like, what was that exact story?
Well, I'm thinking of when we just got back, we ran a retreat in Portugal a month ago or so. After we finished our retreat, we rented bikes. Anna ended up having a bike accident where she fell off the bike and she really damaged her elbow. And so we ended up having to decide whether we come back to Canada or have her have surgery there. We ended up deciding to come back to Canada for the surgery, but we had to spend a number of days in Portugal before we get a flight back. So what ended up happening was that Anna was really activated because of emotionally around her pain and discomfort with her elbow and whatever. And I just went into problem solving mode. I was rationalizing why we were doing what we were doing, making sure that it was happening, what was best for us to do. And Anna really just wanted much more empathy on my part and communicating with her and really sort of opening up about what this was doing to the end of our trip and what it meant for when we got back to Canada, knowing that we had surgery to look forward to. So I went into more what you were talking about as a stoic way of being in the circumstance. And Anna was really much more, sort of expressive and dealing with what she was, and rightly so. I mean, she was in a lot of pain.
I was vulnerable and I was waiting for you to lean in to sort of checking in with me at a heart level. And we live a lot in assumption. And so there would be Tim's assumption would be that I know he's there. I know he's solid. I know he's stoic. I know he'll take care of us. But I needed to touch down in that space. I needed to feel very seen and understood around this is a really dramatically new experience. Even talking about it now, I'm feeling pretty emotional, even though I'm like, 5 weeks post surgery now. But we got to the hospital and I was I'm just not okay. I don't even want to have the consult with, I don't feel connected to you. I don't. And then I would get quite activated. And Tim pulled up his chair and we sat facing each other. We were put in this little tiny waiting room by ourselves. We could see other people coming in. And I said, I need us to dialogue now. And he said, yeah, okay, let's do that. And so when you said earlier, Mehak, it might feel sort of contrived or artificial. It saved us because we're sitting in a hospital in a foreign country. We're looking at each other in the eye and he's saying, okay, tell me where you're at. I want to hear now. And we could process that. And he mirrored me and he was empathetic with me. And of course I had to be with him as well, which was, I know you're trying to take care of us. We'll get stuff done and make sure we get on the flight and decide where is best to have surgery. And I know you're concerned. He keeps it so contained that I can't access it unless we're going to sit down and have these dialogues where then he will reveal himself to me in a way that touches me deeply.
I'm thinking about this story in your work with couples. Do you notice a pattern with the stoic person or the sensitive person that normally has to initiate this level of we should engage, we should talk about what's happening because I can see how you are, or it's kind of different for everyone?
That's a really good question. Um, so we're talking in a way about two different things. So the stoic and the sensitive, they may not always equate to the hailstorm and the turtle. They might not always. We've just been exploring that for ourselves. But if we think about it, if I just shift it slightly to, is it the one who has more ready access to their feelings and can name them, or the person who is more rational and more, at least seemingly, uh, more even and more contained. So you've got like more containment and more expression. That's the dichotomy. It would be the expressive one typically who's going to say, we need to talk about this. We really need to talk about this. I need us to talk about this. Typically it's going to be the expressive one who's going to invite.
I'm thinking about just based on those two archetypes that you've mentioned, the turtle or the hailstorm. I'm definitely a hailstorm. And I think I've gravitated towards people who sometimes could be a combination of both. But, I remember one of my most serious and longest relationships of 5 years, it was this dynamic. And I think in that, like when we had our differences, it wasn't, we didn't think there to sit like, hey, let's talk about it, because I was so, like, much like a hailstorm, I would completely stop the interaction and be like, you have to come to me. And then if you didn't come to me, then I would think you don't care. But I also think that there should have been balance on both parts. And I think that goes back to when you think about the stoic and sensitive like dynamic, you can't have this conversation without talking about, at least for me, like growing up in immigrant households and communities. I think there was a lot of admiration for stoic people, right? Like they were described as like the person who kept going, didn't complain, was resilient, carried everything on their back, and was problem solving. And the person that was, a little bit more expressive, it was almost taken in a negative way. But now we're correcting that. And we are leaning more towards the expressive person just being more emotionally in tuned and being vulnerable. My devil's advocate mind, and to challenge this a little bit, is there a risk in over pathologizing like everything? Like sometimes someone is not withdrawing or coming to you because they're stoic. Like maybe they're just not that invested. And maybe sometimes someone's not emotionally expressive because they're stressed. Sometimes they're just avoiding accountability. So, is there a danger in being so compassionate and trying to understand the other person when it should actually be a red flag?
In a dating world, I think what you're talking about makes a lot of sense. If I had pursued Tim and he had not got back to me for a few days and then a few days later said, oh yeah, I found this on my desk and, sure, if you want to go out, we could go out. I would have said, no, screw you. I'm not doing that. Like, why would I wait around for you? And I hear my single clients who are still single or dating or trying to find a life partner saying like, I'm not going to work harder than them. And, I had this fantasy that you write in that one would write in a profile. And I guess it would turn off a ton of people, but like, I'm willing to do all these things and have fun. And this is who I am. And I understand that relationships are hard work. And I want someone who's ready to dig in when the going gets tough, because it's going to get tough. Romantic love comes to an end, and power struggle, the second stage of relationship, well researched, well known, will happen. And if you have a partner or another person who is willing to engage with you in the power struggle in a conscious way, what is going on here? Why are we bickering? Why do you turn away? Why do I turn away? What's going on in this space? And that's the willingness that we're looking for. That isn't about it, the willingness to get deeply curious, stop making assumptions, and wonder, really wonder, what is happening here between us? IMAGO says that the work and relationships are in what is called a relational paradigm, not an individual paradigm, that everything happening is being influenced. Like what Tim does influences how I show up, and what I do influences how he shows up. We're not working in silos, in isolation of one another. So as long as we're both willing to sit down and not just face the music, but listen to it really deeply, listen into one another rather than projecting onto one another what we think is happening, then we're going to be okay, because we're going to keep doing that.
What you're going to be doing is deepening your relationship. That's what we believe leads to real love, real romantic love. I really think that that's really been it. We've really created for Anna and I a really good balance between the two of us.
And Mehak, I would say, like you, I grew up in a family where, well, not like you. Tim grew up in a family where not sharing emotions was the rule. And I grew up in a family where expressing everything all the time was the culture and was respected, and containment wasn't nearly enough. So I think those kinds of cultural differences, and you were bringing it back to this theme of cultural differences and an immigrant story. And I think that's really important, because if we were the same and had grown up the same in the same culture, and I work with lots of couples like that, then we don't have to explore our cultural differences, family cultural differences a little bit, but not deeply.
I brought that point up because I've seen it play out in my household, right? Like, I have tremendous respect for both of my parents, and I'm a lot more like my mom, where I am very expressive and I have to talk about things right away. And my dad needed some time, and then, like they would talk it out once he was ready. So I think I kind of looked for that dynamic in my relationships, but it's okay to look for that dynamic and be in a different dynamic, but you have to have healthy coping strategies and mechanisms to eventually be with that person. But I was thinking one of the things that we've lost as a society is ugly stages of life. And I think we've also lost the ugly stages of relationships. And we need to come back to a point where we see these ugly stages, but they're not necessarily ugly. They're just tough and they're difficult, and ugly versions of yourself comes out. You have to be determined, and you have to also realize that, like, not everything is going to be polished, right? And you need to like work through it. Anna, you mentioned that if you were on a dating app now, one of the first questions you would ask a potential partner is, are you open to doing counseling with me? Or do you have a fantasy version that you see happening in dating? How open are you to work with me on, not meeting that fantasy version? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Before you start dating, when it gets ugly, when we get tough, like when it gets hard, you might not see it on the first date, but I would say pretty close. Like, I'm just laying all my cards on the table. Do you have some kind of fantasy about relationships being like easy and romantic forever and loving? Because if so, we should probably either debunk that myth, and or we should just call it now, because it's not going to stay that way. I mean, Tim and I were in a really, really rough spot when we started therapy. Like, we were not in a good place. This turtle hailstorm dynamic was doing us in and doing our kids in. We had to put a stop to it and find a way. And I was a trained therapist looking for help. So I love that term ugly, the ugly stage of relationship. And it's not just one, there's going to be more. And what it requires is, like, there is commitment. That, like, I was thinking about, like, when you start dating someone, like, if you have some degree of attraction, some degree of chemistry, that or the hint of a chemistry that you think could grow, and you see lots of glaring differences, and you don't know whether they're going to show up in the way you really want. You don't know if your friends and family are going to like them. What's the harm in having a coffee and just having a meaningful conversation and seeing if they're open to growing? Are they open to learning about themselves? Because that's a gate, that's a doorway into connection.
But it's hard because your brain is telling you,
Run, run.
yes,
Mm,
yes.
yeah,
I'm kind of in that like predicament right now. And my friend at the cottage gave me an advice, and he's like, you don't have to figure out what's happening next week. You also don't have to figure out what's happening next year. Just just go on the date and see, take it day by day,
yeah,
you know? Yeah.
yeah. Go
Yeah.
on the date and ask some good questions. Have some fun, for sure. Have some fun and make sure you feel safe. Like, we're not talking about the red flags that are about safety. We're talking about the red flags that are about you connect online and then they people very quickly say, well, I was ghosted. Well, were you? Or did that person break their arm in Portugal and, go offline for a little bit, even though they have their phone with them? Are they someone who doesn't love social media as much? Does that mean they're not worth asking? Like, I don't want to make up a story about why you're not talking to me anymore. Like, are you really not interested? Or is there some potential to connect? Because we live in story. And Tim, you were going to say that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I was. Yeah, we live in story and we make assumptions. A lot of times we've got a narrative in our head about what somebody is, what's going on with somebody, and it could be so far from the truth. And and one of the things that I was going to say is just for all people that are dating out there is, you know there are people that you should definitely you recognize very quickly on, this is not the person for me, one way or another, and you really do need to walk away. But there are a lot of people out there who've had an experience where they've walked away, where there was massive potential for a remarkable relationship with somebody. They just didn't find that potential and that connection.
Well, I have the opposite dilemma. This person is fantastic, showing up very well, consistent. But again, I grew up in a household where the one line that I always heard is, what will people think? What will people think? And I keep going back to that. So I feel safe and happy and I want to continue it. But I think on paper, it doesn't match what I saw for myself and maybe what other people have anticipated that they would see for myself. Those two narratives are contradicting and I don't know, feeling weird about it. So, we'll see.
Hmm, tough.
I didn't even introduce Tim. I kept him hidden for a little while. We have this story where he was driving my car because he was far more in the masculine, chauvinistic kind of, like, that's what one does at that time. And he's like, "Oh, I'll drive your car." And we were driving in the city, and he goes, and I was in the passenger seat, and he goes, "I don't know. I must have pissed off this driver."
We were stopped at a stoplight. Yeah.
There was a man beside us in a truck, like pointing and angry, like trying to get attention. And Tim's like, "I don't know what's going on, but this guy won't stop pointing." And I looked up and I said, "Oh, that's my dad."
Oh my God.
And he was like, "Why are you driving get my daughter's attention?" Yeah, he just wanted to say hi. And like, he saw that he was driving my car and he didn't know who he was because I hadn't introduced him.
Wow. And was it in that moment, Tim, that you realized that like Anna might have been like keeping you away, or did you have an incline before?
Well, we had talked about it to a certain extent, but I knew that it could come to an awkward moment. I didn't expect this to be the moment at a stoplight, but yeah, it was very clear. Anna had just come out of another relationship, and I think it was there needed to be a bit of a transition, I think, for her family.
I did not want Tim to fall in love with my family. He never did, by the way. But I didn't want him to because I'd had other partners who got smitten with my family, but they weren't necessarily smitten with me. It was so foreign and so different and so dynamic. And I wanted to make sure I had clear headspace to make a decision on my own before I introduced him to my world. And not just that they were smitten, but that my family clouded my judgment of what I thought of other people. I had them in my head, and I wanted to make sure it was my head assessing, not theirs.
Right, right. No, I totally get that. Again, there's nothing that anyone would say negatively about this person. He's great, but I just think, when like you have this version that you think a life that you think someone's going to live, and it's a little bit different.
Very, 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 very rarely does it ever come that the picture in our head is what we end up with. I mean, there is no way I would have thought that Anna was going to be the person I was going to, when I was 16, that I would end up meeting. And or 19. End up meeting eventually and deciding that this is the person for me. It's just, it's amazing how it can come out of left field.
I've been thinking about this this entire time we've been talking. Tim, why weren't you there when Anna came to see you?
Oh, what a great question.
That is a great question. There are two answers. The simple answer is that I was playing squash with a buddy of mine, and I just lost track of time. And the second part of the answer is I am terrible with time. And I just didn't, put two and two together. And, I thought probably, and it's an arrogant thing on my part, is that, oh, well, she'll probably wait for me or come back or something. I'm a few minutes late. I was just being a goofy young male guy who thought that, it'll all work out. I could have lost her. I mean, Anna could have said, no, that's done there. Boy, would that ever have been, sliding doors moment.
But I think, Anna, I'll give you your flowers. I love that you kind of were like playful and you're like, you get one more chance. And you gave Tim the benefit of doubt that, like, yeah, it's not like he's not interested. Cause sometimes people are, they lose track of time or something comes up. But again, I think you practice what you're preaching in your work, which is lead with curiosity and not accusation. So I do like that. So, my previous guest left a question, and I'm interested to see how you will answer it. So, the question is, what is the most important trait that you look for in a significant other?
Well, I mean, if we're staying with our story, what I was looking for then was, and boy, I got it, was someone who was very serious, because I'd been with someone who was very playful before you, right? And who was very attuned and focused and present. And I think the serious I'm now fighting against in our power struggle, I'm like, could you lighten up a bit? And we've been working on that a lot and having a lot of fun. And the focused and attuned, Tim's been really doing some deep work around, becoming more emotionally present in a way that's absolutely charming and fulfilling.
I think the thing that I would say is that I really wanted to have somebody in my connection who I knew it was going to be a real partnership, and I would have their back and they would have my back. And intermixed in all that is the romantic aspect to it. But certainly, I guess I would say conscious connection.
Conscious connection. I like that. I like both your answers, and it seems like you found that. So that's a beautiful success story.
We did. Yeah. Well, we found it and we made it.
No, we worked hard at it.
And we're not done.
Yeah, the journey continues. What question would you guys like to leave for my next guest?
I have one. My question would be, what would be an important thing about yourself you would share with a potential partner that would be important as to how they responded to that information?
That is beautiful. That is beautiful and deep. I really like that. Okay. Thank you, Tim, for that. And Anna?
Mine was centered, it's a bit different, but I like yours, honey. Mine was around what would cause you to potentially give up prematurely on connecting with someone with whom you might have an amazing and rich future.
See, I think both of those are so complementary. We have noted both of those questions down, so thank you so much. If people want to actually chat with you and learn more about your work, let's shamelessly plug some socials in so they can find you.
Our brand is Replenish Relationships. And that is our handle on Instagram as well, Replenish Relationships, and on Facebook as well.
And our website's replenishrelationships.com. And if you go to our website, you can find out about workshops that we run online and retreats that we run in Canada and northern Ontario, province of Ontario. And also we run retreats in Europe. We've done them in Tenerife in the Canary Islands and in Athens, Greece, and on a catamaran. And also we're now running them in Portugal. We just ran a very enjoyable one and successful one in the Algarve in southern Portugal.
Workshops in Europe is a good strategy move. You have to be in a good mood on a catamaran, right?
Yeah.
Well, so we think that when you're traveling, it brings out both the best and the most challenging in relationships. So why not travel and learn about your relationship? Like, what a great way to spark some love drugs and at the same time
have some adventure.
Yeah, and have some adventure and at the same time deepen your understanding of one another. So
that's very true. I always say if you want to find out if you guys are gonna if you're a good match, travel together.
Yeah, absolutely.
To current daters and hopeless romantics like myself, what piece of advice would you leave us with?
Well, Tim, I loved what you said about conscious connection, that the journey to conscious connection means commitment and having really deep, meaningful conversations where you listen really deeply. I mean, so have the fun and have the adventures and do things out of the ordinary and learn from one another. Like, let your partner or your potential partner teach you something that you wouldn't otherwise do, and you teach them something. And in the end, it's about learning how to talk to one another and how to listen deeply. That will make all the difference.
And by doing that, you'll be able to learn more about yourself.
Agreed. And I think one of my biggest takeaways from today's conversation is that healthy relationships aren't built by avoiding the differences that you see in your partner. It's built by learning how to navigate them. And, oftentimes the goal becomes to find someone that challenges you because you're going to have to do the hard work. It's in those moments where you find someone that you want to be with that challenges you, and you grow with them alongside.
Exactly. If you think about relationships as a container for growth, both personal and relational growth, then they're not just, it's someone to love. It's someone to learn with, grow with, and learn from. The relationship is the container. It is the opportunity.
It's been such a pleasure talking to both of you. And as you said, Anna, we could stay here for hours and chat about all of these things. But thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Thanks very much. It's been wonderful to be here.
Yes, thanks so much, Mehak, for having us on your show. It's been a pleasure.
And as always, to anyone listening, if you enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend, send it to someone who's dating, married, confused, thriving, and, getting all of their relationship advice, from TikTok or Love Island or wherever. But I truly think that this is going to be refreshing for you to hear it from Tim and Anna. So definitely check them out. And thank you for spending a part of your day with us. And as always, I will see you next time on Lovely. Lovely is an Immigrantly media production. This episode was produced by Sadia Khan and Shay Yu, written by Mehak. Theme music, sound design, and editing by Lou Raskin. Other music by Epidemic Sound. See you next week for more Lovely.